Most people would walk right past this penny without a second glance. But some 1964 Lincoln cents have sold for hundreds, and a few rare versions for far more than anyone expected. What looks like spare change could actually be a small piece of American history hiding in plain sight. Today, we're diving into one of the most misunderstood and fascinating Lincoln pennies ever made, the 1964 Mint Mark Lincoln cent. It's a coin many people still find in old jars, drawers, and collections, yet few truly understand what makes some examples ordinary and others surprisingly valuable. The coin we're talking about today is the 1964 Lincoln penny with a small D mint mark under the date. That letter tells us the coin was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the busiest coin-producing facilities in U.S. history. On the front, it features President Abraham Lincoln, just like most pennies from the mid-20th century. On the back, it displays the familiar Lincoln Memorial design, which was used from 1959 through 2008. At first glance, this penny looks almost identical to millions of others from the same era. But what makes the 1964 special is not just its design. It's the story behind when it was made, how it was made, and the rare versions that escaped into circulation. To understand this coin, we need to go back to the early 1960s. America was in the middle of massive social and economic change. The space race was underway, the civil rights movement was reshaping the nation, and the U.S. Mint was struggling with a serious coin shortage. People were hoarding coins, especially silver ones, because the metal inside them was becoming more valuable than their face value. In 1964, the government made a major decision. That year marked the final time U.S. dimes, quarters, and half dollars were struck with real silver. Starting in 1965, those coins switched to cheaper metals. But pennies were different. The Lincoln cent in 1964 was still made mostly of copper, about 95%, giving it that warm reddish color collectors love today. The Denver Mint worked nonstop that year, producing over 3.7 billion pennies, one of the highest mintages in U.S. history. And yet, despite that massive production, certain versions of the 1964 penny remained surprisingly scarce, especially in top condition or with rare mint errors. Let's take a closer look at the design. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln facing right, his profile strong and calm. Above his head is the word Liberty. To the right is the date, 1964, and just beneath it, the small D mint mark. Under his chin are the words "In God We Trust," a phrase that first appeared on U.S. coins in the 1800s. On the reverse side is the Lincoln Memorial, introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. Above it are the words United States of America, and below it, 1 cent. The phrase EPLURIBUS UNUM arches across the top. Now let's talk about what makes some 1964 pennies special. First, there's the metal. Unlike modern pennies, which are mostly zinc with a thin copper coating, 1964 pennies are solid copper alloy. That gives them a heavier feel and a richer color. Many collectors prefer these older copper cents because they age beautifully and represent a different era of U.S. coinage. But the real excitement comes from errors and high-grade examples. One of the most desirable varieties of the 1964 penny is the double die error. This happens when the coin die strikes the design slightly out of alignment, creating doubled letters or numbers. On some rare 1964 cents, you can see doubling in the date or in the words Liberty or In God We Trust. These are not scratches or damage. They are minting errors created at the factory. Another valuable variety is the off-center strike. These coins were struck when the blank was not properly positioned in the press, causing part of the design to be missing. Depending on how dramatic the off-center strike is, these coins can sell for anywhere from tens to hundreds of dollars. There are also clipped planchets, where a piece of the metal blank was accidentally cut off before striking. These coins look like they're missing a bite from the edge and are highly collectible. Then there are broad strikes, where the coin spreads out wider than normal because it wasn't properly contained during striking. These can look larger than standard pennies and often bring strong prices. But even without errors, condition matters a lot. Most 1960-40 pennies were heavily used in circulation. They were spent, dropped, scratched, and worn down over decades. Finding one today in average condition is easy. Finding one in pristine, uncirculated condition is much harder. Coins are graded on a scale that ranges from poor to mint state, with higher numbers representing better condition. A typical circulated 1960-40 penny might be worth only 1 or 2 cents, but a brilliant uncirculated example with full red color can sell for several dollars. And top-graded specimens, certified by professional grading services, have sold for far more. In one major auction, a 1960-40 Lincoln Cent graded M/S67 red sold for over $3,000. That's for a penny with no rare error, just perfect preservation. That kind of value comes from condition rarity, not metal or age. Error coins bring even stronger results. A 1960-40 double die penny in excellent condition can sell for hundreds, and some dramatic error examples have reached over $1,000, depending on visibility and demand. Now let's talk about how to tell if you might have something special. First, look for the D mint mark under the date. That confirms the coin came from Denver. Then examine the surface closely. Use a magnifying glass if possible. Check the date and lettering for doubling, especially on the numbers 1, 9, and 6, and on the word Liberty. Next, look at the edges. Are they smooth and round, or is there a flat cut or missing section? That could indicate a clipped planchet. Does the design appear off-center? Is part of Lincoln's face missing? That could be an off-center strike. Then check the color. Original copper pennies from 1964 can range from bright red to reddish-brown to deep brown. Coins with full red color are more valuable, especially if the surfaces are clean and free of spots. Also, weigh the coin. A genuine 1964 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If it's significantly lighter or heavier, that could suggest damage, corrosion, or something unusual. As for fakes, counterfeit pennies are rare because the base metal is inexpensive, but altered coins do exist. Some people try to add fake mint marks or alter dates. Always look for signs of tampering around the mint mark area or uneven surfaces. If you believe you have something valuable, having the coin authenticated by a professional grading service is the safest step. Now let's talk about some fun and surprising facts about the 1960-40 penny. First, 1964 is one of the most collected years in American coinage history. It was the final year of silver coins and the last year before major changes to U.S. currency. Many people saved coins from that year, making it emotionally significant to collectors. Second, Denver struck more pennies in 1964 than nearly any other mint in any other year. That makes the average coin common, but it also means error coins from that year have more chances to exist, which is why collectors actively search rolls from the 1960s hoping to find hidden treasures. Third, some people believe there were experimental metal tests during this era. Although no confirmed aluminum or steel 1964 pennies have ever been officially released, still rumors persist, which keeps interest in this date alive. Fourth, copper prices have risen over the years, making the metal content of Pennies 1,982 pennies more appealing to investors and collectors alike, even though melting them is illegal. The copper alone makes these coins feel more substantial than modern cents. So why do collectors still love the 1960-40 Lincoln penny? Because it represents the end of one chapter and the beginning of another in American coinage. It was made during a time of transition, uncertainty, and massive production. It tells the story of a country rushing to meet demand while preparing for a new monetary system. Collectors also love this coin because it's accessible. You don't need thousands of dollars to start searching. You can find these coins in inherited collections, old jars, estate boxes, or rolls from banks. And every coin holds the possibility, however small, of being something special. There's something powerful about that idea. A coin that once bought candy or gum decades ago might now be worth hundreds, maybe even thousands, simply because of how it was struck, preserved, or discovered. And unlike ancient coins locked behind museum glass, this one is within reach. You can hold it. You can study it. You can find it yourself. Many collectors say the 1960 penny was one of the first coins they ever searched for because it's common enough to find but rare enough to make the hunt exciting. It teaches beginners how to spot errors, evaluate condition, and understand the basics of coin grading. It also reminds us that value isn't always about age alone. It's about history, rarity, demand, and story, and the 1960 Lincoln penny has all four. So the next time you come across an old jar of pennies, don't rush past the 1964 dates. Look closely. Check for that small D, examine the surfaces. Tilt the coin under the light, because hidden among ordinary cents could be a piece of American history that's worth far more than 1 cent. And even if your coin turns out to be common, you'll still be holding something meaningful. A solid copper reminder of a year when America's money, economy, and future were all changing at once. Sometimes the most fascinating treasures aren't locked in vaults or museums. They're sitting quietly in your pocket, waiting to be noticed. Most people walk past this coin every day without noticing it. But what if I told you a single penny from 1967 could be hiding a story worth hundreds, even thousands of dollars? And what if one of them is already sitting in your home, unnoticed, forgotten, and waiting to be discovered? Today, we're talking about the 1967 no mint mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary 1 cent coin. Abraham Lincoln on the front, the Lincoln Memorial on the back, brown copper color, nothing flashy. But behind this simple design is one of the most interesting chapters in U.S. coin history, and in certain conditions, this penny becomes far more than just pocket change. The 1967 Lincoln penny was made during a very unusual time in American coin production. From 1965 through 1967, the U.S. Mint made a decision that confused collectors for decades and created rare opportunities that still exist today. During these years, mint marks were completely removed from most coins. That means no matter where your 1967 penny was made, it carries no letter beneath the date. No D, no S, nothing at all. The goal wasn't to trick collectors. It was actually meant to stop people from hoarding coins. In the mid-1960s, rising silver prices caused Americans to pull silver coins out of circulation, creating shortages. To discourage collecting and stockpiling, the government removed mint marks so coins would seem less collectible. Ironically, that decision ended up making some of these coins more fascinating and, in certain cases, very valuable. The 1967 penny was struck in huge numbers, mostly in Philadelphia. Over 3 billion were made. That might sound like a lot, and it is. But quantity alone doesn't decide value. Condition, errors, and special characteristics are what separate ordinary coins from extraordinary ones. And the 1967 penny has more than its fair share of surprises. This coin is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin, giving it that warm reddish tone when freshly minted. Over time, most examples turned brown, but some were carefully stored away and still exist in brilliant red condition today. Those red coins are far scarcer than most people realize. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, liberty to the left, and the date to the right. The designer was Victor David Brenner, whose initials, VDB, appear at the base of Lincoln's shoulder. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall, with Lincoln's statue visible between the columns if you look closely. Above it are the words United States of America, and below, 1 cent. Nothing about the design seems dramatic, but the story of this penny lies beneath the surface. Because mint marks were removed in 1967, collectors can't immediately tell where a coin was struck. That makes identifying rare errors more difficult, but also more exciting. And errors are where this coin truly shines. Some 1967 pennies were struck off-center, where the design appears partially missing. Others show doubled die errors, where parts of the lettering or date appear doubled due to misalignment during striking. These errors weren't caught immediately and entered circulation. Most people spent them without a second thought. But today, collectors actively search for these mistakes because certain examples can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on the severity and clarity of the error. One of the most sought-after varieties is the 1967 double die obverse penny. In these coins, the date and lettering show visible doubling, especially in God We Trust, and the numbers of the year. Genuine double die coins are rare, and when authenticated, they can command strong prices. Another valuable variety is the 1967 penny struck on the wrong metal planchet. Occasionally, a copper penny was struck on a blank meant for another coin, such as a dime or foreign coin. These errors are extremely rare and can sell for thousands of dollars if verified. Even more surprising are 1967 pennies that show major die breaks, clipped planchets, or broad strikes, where the coin lacks its raised rim and appears wider than normal. These dramatic mint errors stand out instantly and are highly collectible. But even without errors, condition alone can turn a common coin into a valuable one. Most 1967 pennies in circulation today are worn, scratched, or dull brown. These usually sell for just a few cents to maybe $1. But coins in uncirculated condition, especially those with original red luster, are a completely different story. Professional grading services classify copper pennies into 3 color categories: brown, red-brown, and red. A fully red 1967 penny with no wear and strong luster is surprisingly rare. In top grades, these coins have sold for hundreds of dollars at major auctions. For example, a 1967 Lincoln penny graded MS67, read by a major grading service, sold for over $3,000. Another example graded MS66 red sold for more than $1,000. These aren't one-time flukes. They reflect how much collectors value condition, eye appeal, and originality. That's an incredible transformation for a coin that originally cost 1 cent and was once tossed into coffee cans, glove compartments, and junk drawers across the country. So how do you know if your 1967 penny is worth more than face value? First, check the condition. If your coin is brown, heavily worn, or scratched, it's likely common. But if it looks bright, shiny, and red, with sharp details and no signs of wear, it's worth closer inspection. Next, look for errors. Use a magnifying glass and examine the date and lettering. If you see doubling, especially on "In God We Trust," or the numbers in the date, you may have something special. Check the edges. If the rim looks incomplete or oddly shaped, that could indicate a mint error. If the coin appears unusually thin, thick, or light, it may have been struck on the wrong metal. Weighing your penny can also help. A standard 1967 copper penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. A significant difference in weight could signal an error coin, which deserves professional evaluation. Now, what about counterfeits? While fake 1967 pennies aren't extremely common, altered coins do exist. Some people try to add doubling or change surfaces to mimic valuable varieties. The safest way to protect yourself is to avoid cleaning your coin and never alter it in any way. Cleaning actually lowers value. If you think you've found something rare, submit it to a reputable coin grading service for authentication. Another thing to watch for is artificially red coins. Some people attempt to chemically brighten old pennies to make them appear more valuable. Experts can detect this instantly, and such coins lose nearly all collector value. Here's something most people don't realize. The reason so many 1967 pennies still exist today is because Americans saved coins during that era, fearing metal shortages and inflation. Jars of pennies from the 1960s were tucked away and forgotten. Today, those same jars are being rediscovered in basements, estates, and old storage boxes, giving collectors new chances to find high-grade survivors and rare errors. Another fun fact is that 1967 was one of the last years before copper began disappearing from American pennies. In 1982, the U.S. Mint shifted to copper-plated zinc coins to save costs. That makes 1967 pennies part of the final generation of solid copper Lincoln cents, which adds to their appeal for both collectors and metal enthusiasts. And here's something even more surprising. Because mint marks were removed in 1967, many people mistakenly believe their penny is missing something or that it's an error. But in reality, every 1967 penny has no mint mark by design. That confusion often leads people to overlook genuinely rare examples, assuming all no mint mark pennies are the same. They're not. Collectors love the 1967 penny because it sits at the intersection of history, mystery, and opportunity. It represents a strange time when the U.S. Mint tried to make coins less collectible, only to make them more fascinating decades later. It's common enough to be accessible, but rare enough in top condition and error varieties to reward careful searching. There's also something deeply satisfying about finding value where others see nothing. The idea that a penny you received in change, or found in an old jar, could be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars creates a sense of discovery that few hobbies can match. And unlike many expensive collectibles, you don't need special tools or a big investment to get started. You just need patience, curiosity, and a good eye. So the next time you see a 1967 penny, don't dismiss it. Turn it over, look closely, check its color, examine its details. You might be holding a quiet survivor from a forgotten chapter in American coin history, a coin that passed through countless hands, witnessed a changing nation, and somehow stayed hidden in plain sight. Because sometimes the most valuable treasures aren't gold or silver. They're small, copper, and sitting at the bottom of a drawer, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. And who knows? The next time you empty your pockets, that ordinary-looking penny might just turn out to be the most interesting coin you've ever owned. What if the penny sitting in your pocket right now could be worth far more than 1 cent? Not because it's old, but because of a tiny detail most people never notice. Today, we're uncovering the story of the 1978 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary, yet quietly holds surprises that have made collectors stop, stare, and sometimes pay serious money. The 1978 D Lincoln penny is a 1 cent coin made in the United States at the Denver Mint. The small letter D under the date tells us exactly where it was struck. At first glance, it looks like millions of other pennies. Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But like many everyday coins, its real story lives beneath the surface. And in the world of coin collecting, even small details can mean big differences in value. To understand why this penny matters, we need to step back to the late 1970s. The United States was going through major changes. Inflation was rising, gas prices were high, and the cost of making coins was becoming a serious concern for the government. Copper prices were increasing, and the U.S. Mint was already thinking about switching to cheaper metals for future pennies. But in 1978, the penny was still made from mostly copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving it that familiar solid weight and warm reddish color. That year, the Denver Mint produced more than 5 billion pennies, including the 1978 D that might sound like an enormous number. And it is. But when it comes to coin collecting, mintage alone doesn't always tell the whole story. Many coins from that massive production run were heavily used, damaged, lost, or melted. And among those billions, a very small number stand out because of rare errors, unusual conditions, or near-perfect strikes that collectors prize. The design of the 1978 D penny is classic and instantly recognizable. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln facing right, a design created by sculptor Victor David Brenner in 1909. Above Lincoln's head is the word Liberty, and to the right is the date 1978 with the small D mint mark just below it. Around the edges are the words "In God We Trust." On the back, you see the Lincoln Memorial, which replaced the wheat stalk design in 1959. If you look closely at high-quality examples, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. Above it reads, United States of America, and below it is 1 cent, with EPLURIBUSUNUM across the top of the building. Most people spend pennies without ever looking at them, but collectors look closely at the sharpness of the lettering, the shine of the surface, the tiniest imperfections in the metal. And that's where the 1978 D penny becomes interesting. One of the main reasons collectors care about this coin is not because most of them are rare, but because a few of them are. Certain 1978 D pennies were struck with errors, and in the coin world, errors are not mistakes, they are treasures. One of the most famous errors associated with this coin is the double die variety. This happens when the coin die strikes the design slightly off alignment, creating a doubled appearance in the lettering or date. On some 1978 pennies, especially rare examples, collectors have found doubling in the words "In God We Trust" or in the date itself. To the naked eye, it might look like blurry text. To a collector, it can mean hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Another error that shows up on some 1978 D pennies is the off-center strike. This happens when the blank coin isn't perfectly aligned when struck, leaving part of the design missing and part of the blank exposed. The more dramatic the off-center strike, while still showing the date, the more valuable the coin tends to be. There are also clipped planchet errors, where part of the metal blank was improperly cut before striking, resulting in a curved or straight chunk missing from the edge. And then there are broad strikes, where the coin was struck without the collar that normally shapes it, causing it to spread wider than usual. Most 1978 D pennies are worth just 1 cent, but rare error examples can sell for anywhere from $50 to several $100s, depending on the type and severity of the error and the coin's condition. Condition matters more than most people realize. In coin collecting, condition is measured on a grading scale from poor to perfect mint state. A coin that has never been used in circulation, with full shine and no wear, is called uncirculated. Among uncirculated coins, the highest grades, known as MS67, MS68, or even MS69, are extremely rare, especially for coins that were mass-produced like the 1978 D penny. In top condition, a regular 1978 D penny without any errors has sold at auction for surprising amounts. For example, certified high-grade examples graded MS67 red have sold for over $1,000 at major coin auctions. These are coins that look almost exactly as they did the moment they left the mint: blazing copper color, sharp details, and flawless surfaces. That's what makes this coin so fascinating. A penny you might ignore in your change jar could be worth 1 cent, or it could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on tiny details invisible to most people. So how do you know if you have a valuable 1978 D penny? First, check for the mint mark. Look just below the date on the front of the coin. If you see a small D, it was struck in Denver. No mint mark means it came from Philadelphia. Both are common, but today we're focused on the Denver version. Next, look closely at the date and lettering. Use a magnifying glass if you have one. Check for doubling, especially in the numbers 1978 and the phrase "In God we trust." True doubling looks like a shadow image or slightly offset letters, not just damage or wear. Then examine the edges and shape of the coin. Is it perfectly round? Or does it look clipped, stretched, or off-center? Errors like these are uncommon and often valuable. After that, look at the surface. Is the coin shiny and smooth, or dull and worn? A bright red copper color usually means the coin has not circulated much. The more original luster it has, the better its chances of being valuable, especially if it appears flawless. If you believe you've found something unusual, the next step is authentication. Reputable coin dealers or third-party grading services like PCGS or NGC can professionally examine and grade your coin. This process confirms whether the coin is real, what condition it's in, and whether any errors are genuine. Counterfeit pennies are extremely rare, especially for coins like the 1978D. Because most are worth so little, fakes are uncommon. However, altered coins do exist, especially when someone tries to add a mint mark or simulate doubling. That's why professional verification is important before buying or selling valuable coins. Now let's talk about some real-world sales. A standard circulated 1978D penny is worth exactly 1 cent. A nice uncirculated example might sell for 10 to 25 cents. But high-grade examples tell a very different story. In one auction, a 1978D penny graded MS67 red sold for over $1,000. Another nearly perfect example graded MS68 sold for even more, because so few coins from that year survived in pristine condition. Error coins have also sold for impressive prices. Double die varieties have fetched anywhere from $100 to over $500, depending on clarity and condition. Off-center strikes with visible dates have sold for similar amounts. Broad strikes and clipped planchets typically sell in the $50 to $300 range, depending on severity and eye appeal. What makes these prices especially interesting is that they're not driven by age. The coin isn't from the 1800s. It's not made of gold or silver. It's not tied to a famous historical event. Instead, its value comes from rarity within abundance. The idea that among billions of ordinary coins, a handful stand out in extraordinary ways. And that's what draws collectors to coins like the 1978D penny. There's something thrilling about searching through everyday change and finding something special. It turns ordinary moments into treasure hunts. A coin that once passed through grocery stores, gas stations, and vending machines could suddenly become a centerpiece in a collection, or even a valuable asset. Here's a surprising fact. In 1978, the U.S. Mint was still producing pennies with nearly pure copper. But just 4 years later, in 1982, the mint switched to copper-plated zinc. That makes the 1978D penny part of the final generation of classic copper cents. Many collectors prefer the weight, color, and feel of these older copper pennies, which adds to their appeal. Another fun detail is that the Lincoln Memorial design on the reverse would eventually be retired in 2009. That means the 1978D penny belongs to a design era that lasted exactly 50 years, from 1959 to 2008, making it part of a complete and collectible series. And then there's the psychology of the penny itself. It's the smallest denomination of U.S. currency, often ignored, dropped, or discarded. Yet it's also one of the most collected coins in America. Millions of people have jars, boxes, and rolls of pennies tucked away in closets and drawers, often without realizing what might be hidden inside. Collectors love the 1978D penny not because it's famous, but because it's accessible. You don't need a fortune to start collecting it. You don't need special connections or rare opportunities. You just need patience, curiosity, and a good eye. And sometimes luck. Many collectors can tell stories of finding valuable coins in loose change, bank rolls, inherited collections, or forgotten jars in garages and basements. The 1978 D penny is exactly the kind of coin that could slip unnoticed through decades, waiting for someone to finally look closely enough. There's also something deeply satisfying about holding history in your hand. That penny was minted during the presidency of Jimmy Carter. It circulated during a time of economic uncertainty, cultural change, and technological growth. It may have passed through thousands of hands. It may have bought a newspaper, a candy bar, or a phone call. And now, decades later, it might be sitting quietly in your home still carrying its story. So why does this coin continue to capture attention today? Because it reminds us that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's hidden in plain sight. Sometimes the smallest objects carry the biggest surprises. And sometimes a simple penny can open the door to history, curiosity, and even unexpected profit. If you have old pennies lying around, especially from the 1970s and earlier, the 1978 D. Lincoln penny is worth checking carefully. Look for errors, look for sharp details, look for that bright copper shine. You might not find anything unusual, but then again, you just might. And that's the magic of coin collecting. Every coin tells a story. Every coin holds potential. And every coin invites you to look closer. So the next time you hear the sound of loose change in your pocket, don't rush to spend it. Pause, take a second look. Because the penny you're holding might not just be spare change. It might be a piece of American history or even a hidden treasure waiting to be discovered. And who knows, the next valuable 1978 D penny might already be in your hands. Imagine finding a penny in your pocket that looks completely ordinary, yet could quietly be worth far more than 1 cent. Not because it's gold, not because it's ancient, but because of a tiny letter stamped under Lincoln's date, the letter D today. We're uncovering the true story behind the 1979 D mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin millions of Americans have held, spent, and overlooked, without ever realizing what makes some of them special. This is the 1979 D Lincoln cent, struck at the Denver Mint during a turning point in American coin history. At first glance, it looks like every other penny, Abraham Lincoln's profile on the front, the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But behind this simple design is a fascinating story of inflation, metal shortages, and a coin system struggling to keep up with a changing economy. And hidden among the millions of these pennies are rare versions collectors actively search for today. To understand why this coin matters, we have to go back to the late 1970s. America was going through economic uncertainty. Inflation was high, gas prices were climbing, and the cost of producing coins was becoming a real problem for the U.S. Mint. Copper prices were rising, and for the first time in history, it was nearly costing more than 1 cent to make a penny. Yet the penny remained essential. It powered vending machines, parking meters, and daily transactions across the country. So the mint continued producing them in massive numbers, while quietly preparing for major changes that would arrive just a few years later. In 1979, the Denver Mint struck over 3.6 billion Lincoln cents. That's billion with a B. These coins flooded into circulation and were used by nearly every American at some point. Children bought candy with them. Parents dropped them into tip jars. Cashiers handed them out without a second thought. But within that ocean of ordinary coins, a small number were created differently, and those are the ones collectors want today. The design of the 1979 D penny follows the classic Lincoln cent style introduced in 1959. On the front, Abraham Lincoln faces right, his profile calm and dignified. Above him are the words "In God We Trust." To the right is the date, 1979, and just below it sits the small but important letter D, showing the coin was struck at the Denver Mint. On the left side is the word Liberty. Turn the coin over, and you see the Lincoln Memorial, a design that appeared on pennies from 1959 through 2008. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, making him one of the few people in U.S. coinage history to appear on both sides of the same coin. The 1979 D penny was made mostly of copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc. It weighs around 3.11 grams and measures just over 19 millimeters in diameter. But this was near the end of an era. Just 3 years later, in 1982, the U.S. Mint would dramatically change penny composition to mostly zinc with only a thin copper coating. That makes the 1979 D one of the last classic copper pennies, and that alone gives it special status among collectors. Most 1979 D pennies are worth exactly 1 cent today, but not all of them. Some coins were struck better than others. Some survived decades of circulation without heavy wear, and some were struck with mistakes, and in the coin world, mistakes can mean money. Let's start with condition. Coins are graded on how well they've been preserved. A penny that's been in circulation for decades usually shows where flattened details, scratches, discoloration. But if a coin somehow escaped circulation and remained in near-perfect condition, its value can rise sharply. A 1979 D penny in average circulated condition is worth face value. But in mint-state condition, meaning it looks nearly new, values increase dramatically. Certified examples graded MS67 or higher, which means almost flawless, have sold at auction for well over $100, and in some cases, several $100s. That might not sound life-changing, but for a penny pulled from loose change, that's remarkable. But condition alone isn't what truly excites collectors. Errors are where things get interesting. Some 1979 D pennies were struck off-center, meaning the design appears shifted and part of the coin is blank. Others show doubled dies, where parts of the lettering or date appear doubled due to a misaligned die during striking. There are also clipped planchets, where a piece of the metal blank was missing before striking, leaving a curved bite-like shape on the coin's edge. One of the most desirable errors from this period is the doubled die obverse, where the date or lettering shows clear doubling under magnification. These are not the tiny machine doubling marks common on modern coins. These are true doubled dies caused by the minting process itself. Some confirmed 1979 D doubled die cents have sold for hundreds, and in top condition, even more. Another sought-after error is the repunched mint mark. In earlier decades, mint marks were punched into dies by hand. Sometimes, the mint mark was punched twice or repositioned, creating overlapping D marks. While rare on 1979 cents compared to older issues, they do exist, and collectors love them. Then there are wrong planchet errors, coins struck on metal blanks meant for other denominations. A penny struck on a dime planchet, for example, would appear smaller and weigh less than normal. These are extremely rare but have sold for thousands of dollars when authenticated. Now let's talk about real-world examples. A 1979 D Lincoln cent graded MS67 read by PCGS sold at auction for over $600. Another high-grade example brought more than $800. A confirmed double die variety sold for several $100s depending on strength of doubling and condition. And rare mint errors, such as major off-center strikes or wrong metal strikes, have sold anywhere from $1,000 to over $5,000. These aren't theoretical values. These are real auction results from collectors who knew what they had and took the time to verify it. So how do you know if your 1979 D penny is real, valuable, or just ordinary? Start with the basics. Look under the date. If you see a small D, it was struck in Denver. Then check the color and weight. A genuine 1979 D penny should weigh about 3.11 grams and appear copper-colored, not silver or gray. If it feels unusually light or looks wrong, that could signal a rare error or a fake. Next, examine the details. Look closely at the date and lettering using a magnifying glass or phone camera zoom. Do the numbers appear doubled? Does Liberty look thick or shadowed? Does the mint mark look oddly shaped or doubled? These are signs worth investigating. Then check the edges. Are they smooth and round, or do you see missing metal, curved cuts, or uneven shaping? Errors often show up around the rim. If you think you found something special, don't clean the coin. Cleaning reduces value. Instead, store it safely in a coin flip or protective holder, and consider having it evaluated by a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. Authentication can mean the difference between a 1-cent coin and a 3-figure collectible. Now here's something most people don't realize. The 1979 penny exists in two different varieties of date size, large date and small date. The difference is subtle, but collectors track them closely. The small date version has thinner numbers and a slightly different 9 shape. While neither version is extremely rare, some varieties command higher premiums in top condition. Another surprising fact is that many of the highest value 1979 pennies were never spent at all. They were pulled straight from mint rolls by collectors in the late 1970s and stored away for decades. That's why pristine examples exist today, and why the price gap between circulated and uncirculated coins is so large. There's also historical importance behind this coin that often gets overlooked. The 1979 penny represents the final years of America's traditional copper cent. Just 3 years later, the mint would switch to zinc-based pennies to save money. That change altered the sound, feel, weight, and long-term durability of U.S. cents forever. In other words, the 1979 penny belongs to the last chapter of a 200-year copper tradition. Collectors see it not just as currency, but as a closing page in American minting history. And here's a fun detail. Because copper prices rose dramatically in the decades after 1979, the raw copper content of a Pennies 1,982 penny can sometimes exceed 1 cent in metal value, though melting U.S. coins is illegal. Still, it's fascinating to know that some of the money in your change jar is technically worth more than its face value, even before collector premiums are added. Another surprising detail is how often rare coins go unnoticed. Estate sales, garage sales, old jars in closets. These are common places where high-grade and error coins have been found. Many collectors today got their start not through coin shops, but through everyday discoveries in ordinary places. And that's what makes the 1979 penny so exciting. It's not locked away in museums. It's not buried in ancient ruins. It's still out there in drawers, piggy banks, coffee cans, and forgotten jars, waiting to be rediscovered. Collectors love this coin because it sits at the intersection of history, accessibility, and possibility. It's affordable to start collecting, yet challenging to master. Anyone can find one, but only a few will find the right one. And that balance keeps collectors searching. It also appeals to people who grew up during the 1970s and 80s. These pennies pass through their hands as children, teenagers, and young adults. Holding one today can feel like touching a small piece of personal history, a reminder of simpler purchases, pocket change, and everyday moments now decades behind us. And for new collectors, the 1979 penny is a gateway coin. It teaches the basics of mint marks, condition grading, error varieties, and market demand. It shows how ordinary coins can become extraordinary, not because of age alone, but because of precision, rarity, and survival. So the next time you see a penny dated 1979 with a tiny D beneath the year, don't dismiss it. Turn it over. Look closely. Check the details. Because even though most of them are common, some are quietly worth far more than face value, and one of them could be sitting in your pocket right now. In the world of coin collecting, history doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a jar, the corner of a drawer, or the change tray at a checkout counter. And sometimes, that whisper comes from a copper coin struck in Denver more than 40 years ago, carrying a story most people never hear. And that's what makes the 1979 Lincoln penny so fascinating. Not because everyone is rare, but because the rare ones are hidden among the ordinary. And finding one isn't about luck, it's about knowing what to look for. So before you toss your next penny aside, take a closer look. Because you never know which ordinary coin might turn out to be something extraordinary. Have you ever looked at a penny and wondered if it might be worth more than just 1 cent? What if I told you that a small copper-colored coin from 1982, with a tiny letter under Lincoln's date, could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars? Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating modern U.S. coins ever made, the 1982 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny. The 1982 D Lincoln penny looks simple at first glance. It's the same familiar Lincoln cent most Americans grew up with. Abraham Lincoln's profile on the front, the Lincoln Memorial on the back, and a small D beneath the date showing it was struck in Denver. But behind that ordinary appearance is one of the most important transition years in U.S. coin history. And that's what makes this penny so exciting to collectors. To understand why this coin matters, we need to go back to the early 1980s. At that time, copper prices were rising fast. It was becoming more expensive for the U.S. Mint to make pennies than the coins were actually worth. For decades, Lincoln cents had been made mostly of copper, but by 1982, that was no longer practical. So the Mint made a major decision. They changed the metal composition of the penny, switching from mostly copper to mostly zinc, coated with a thin layer of copper. This shift didn't happen neatly or cleanly. Instead, 1982 became a crossover year. Both copper pennies and zinc pennies were made. On top of that, some coins had large date numbers and others had smaller date numbers. And some were struck in Philadelphia with no mint mark, while others were struck in Denver with a D mint mark. That means there are multiple varieties of 1982 pennies. But today, we're focusing on one of the most interesting of all, the 1982 D Mint Mark Lincoln cent, especially the rare copper version that technically should not exist. Here's where the story gets exciting. The Denver Mint was officially supposed to strike only zinc pennies in 1982. Copper pennies were supposed to be phased out. But somehow, a small number of copper planchets, or blank coins, ended up in the Denver Mint presses. When they were struck, they produced 1982 D copper pennies. These coins were never meant to exist, and because of that, they are among the rarest modern Lincoln cents known today. To the naked eye, a copper 1982 D penny looks almost identical to a regular one. Same design, same color, same date, same tiny D under the year, but the difference is in the weight. A traditional copper penny weighs about 3.11 grams. A zinc penny weighs about 2.5 grams. That tiny difference is the key to discovering whether your 1982 D penny is common or incredibly rare. Let's talk about the design for a moment. On the front of the coin is Abraham Lincoln, facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date and mint marked to the right. This design was created by Victor David Brenner and has been used since 1909, making it one of the longest-running designs in American coinage. On the back, we see the Lincoln Memorial, with tiny columns and even a small statue of Lincoln visible between them if you look closely. This reverse design was introduced in 1959 and was still being used in 1982. So visually, the 1982 D penny looks just like millions of others. And that's exactly why these rare ones often go unnoticed. Now let's talk about what makes the 1982 D penny special beyond the metal change. First, the year 1982 is the only year in U.S. history when Lincoln cents were produced in 7 different varieties. There were large date copper, small date copper, large date zinc, small date zinc, and versions from both Philadelphia and Denver. But only one variety is truly legendary, the 1982 D small date copper penny. This coin combines 3 rare features. First, it has the Denver Mint mark. Second, it has the small date style. And third, it is struck on a copper planchet instead of zinc. This combination should not exist based on official mint records, yet a small number of these coins have been confirmed. So how rare are they? So far, fewer than 20 confirmed examples are known to exist. That's fewer than many famous era coins, and that's why collectors go wild when one surfaces. In 2017, one example graded by a major grading service sold for over $18,000 at auction. Another sold for more than $10,000 in a private sale. And as more collectors become aware of these coins, demand continues to rise. Some experts believe top-condition examples could eventually exceed $25,000 or more. Even standard 1982D pennies, while common, can still carry value if they are in uncirculated condition or have interesting errors. Some high-grade zinc versions sell for several dollars, while copper versions from Philadelphia can reach even higher prices depending on condition and variety. But the real prize remains the 1982D copper penny. So how can you tell if you have one? The easiest way is with a digital scale. If your 1982D penny weighs around 3.11 grams, you may have a copper coin. If it weighs around 2.5 grams, it's zinc. But weight alone isn't enough. You also need to examine the date style. The small date variety has thinner numbers, especially noticeable in the 2 and the 8. The top curve of the 2 is sharper, and the 8 looks more delicate compared to the bold, chunky numbers on the large date version. If your coin has a small date, a D mint mark, and weighs around 3.11 grams, you could be holding one of the rarest modern pennies ever discovered. And no, a magnet test won't help here, because both copper and zinc pennies are non-magnetic. Color alone isn't reliable either, since zinc pennies can darken over time and look similar to copper. Only weight and professional verification can confirm authenticity. Once you suspect you might have one, the next step is to avoid cleaning it. Cleaning a coin can destroy its value instantly. Instead, place it in a protective holder and send it to a trusted grading service for authentication. That's the only way to confirm whether your penny is truly one of the rare copper Denver strikes. Now let's talk about errors, because the 1982D penny also produced several fascinating mistakes. Some examples show double strikes, where parts of the design appear shifted or repeated. Others show off-center strikes, where the image is partially missing. There are also repunched mint marks and die cracks that add character and value. While most of these errors are modestly priced, some dramatic examples have sold for hundreds of dollars. But even without errors, the metal transition alone makes 1982 one of the most important years in Lincoln cent history. Here's something most people don't realize. Before 1982, every Lincoln penny in your pocket was mostly copper. After 1982, almost every penny was zinc. That means the 1982 penny represents the exact moment when the U.S. penny changed forever. It's the dividing line between the classic copper era and the modern zinc era. And that historical importance alone makes these coins appealing to collectors. Now let's talk about real-world value beyond the famous rare variety. Most 1982D zinc pennies are worth face value unless they are in pristine uncirculated condition. High-grade examples graded MS67 or higher can sell for $5 to $20 or more, depending on demand. Copper 1982 pennies without a mint mark, especially small date versions, can sell for several dollars to over $50 in top condition. But again, the crown jewel remains the 1982D small date copper penny. That's the coin collector's dream of finding in old change jars, piggy banks, and inherited collections. And yes, people really have found them in circulation. Several known examples were discovered by everyday collectors who simply weighed their coins and paid attention to details. These weren't found in bank vaults or private hoards. They were found in rolls, pocket change, and old jars of pennies sitting on shelves for decades. That's what makes this coin so thrilling. The treasure hunt is still alive. Now let's talk about fakes and altered coins, because where there's value, there's risk. Some people try to plate zinc pennies with copper to mimic the appearance of copper coins. Others shave metal from copper coins to match zinc weight, and some even alter mint marks. That's why weight alone isn't enough. Professional grading services test metal composition and examine microscopic details to confirm authenticity. Also, be cautious of sellers claiming every 1982 penny is rare. Most are not. The vast majority are zinc and worth only 1 cent. Only a very specific combination of features makes the valuable version. So what are the exact traits again? You want a 1982 penny with a D mint mark, a small date style, and a weight of about 3.11 grams. That's the holy grail combination. Now for some fun and surprising facts. The copper used in Pennies 1,982 pennies is actually worth more than 1 cent today based on metal value alone, though melting pennies is illegal. This is one of the reasons the mint changed compositions in the first place. Another fun fact is that many collectors ignored zinc pennies when they were first released, assuming they were inferior. But today, zinc-era varieties and errors are becoming more collectible as time passes. And here's something fascinating. The Lincoln cent has been minted longer than any other U.S. coin design in history, and 1982 sits right at the center of its evolution. Collectors love the 1982 D penny not just because of its potential value, but because it tells a story. It's the story of economics, material shortages, manufacturing transitions, and human error. It's proof that even in modern times, rare coins can still be created by accident. For collectors, this coin represents opportunity. It represents the thrill of searching through everyday change and possibly discovering something extraordinary. It represents the idea that history and value can hide in plain sight. And that's what makes the 1982 D Lincoln penny so special. It's not flashy. It's not gold. It's not ancient. But it's mysterious, rare in the right form, and deeply connected to one of the biggest changes in U.S. coinage history. So the next time you see a penny dated 1982 with a small D under the year, don't ignore it. Don't toss it aside. Pick it up. Weigh it. Look closely at the date. Because that tiny piece of copper-colored metal could be worth far more than you ever imagined. In a world where most people rush past spare change without a second thought, coins like the 1982 D Lincoln penny remind us that hidden treasures still exist. Sometimes they're sitting quietly in jars, drawers, or even in your pocket right now. And who knows, the next time you hear a penny hit the table, it might not just be 1 cent. It might be history. It might be rarity. It might be a story waiting to be told. Most people would walk right past this penny without a second glance. But a few rare 1992 D Lincoln cents have sold for more than most people's cars. And one version of this coin is so rare that only a handful are known to exist. Today, we're uncovering why the 1992 D Mint Mark penny might be one of the most misunderstood coins in modern American history. The 1992 D Lincoln penny is a 1 cent coin struck at the Denver Mint in 1992. At first glance, it looks like any other copper-colored penny from the late 20th century. It features Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, a design Americans saw on pennies for decades. Millions of these coins pass through pockets, cash registers, and coin jars, quietly blending into everyday life. But hidden among these ordinary coins are a few extraordinary examples that collectors dream of finding. To understand why this coin matters, we need to look back at what was happening in the United States in 1992. The country was experiencing major changes. The Cold War had recently ended, the economy was shifting, and digital technology was beginning to reshape everyday life. Yet the penny remained one of the most familiar objects in American commerce. That year, the U.S. Mint produced over 4 billion Lincoln cents across its facilities, with the Denver Mint striking more than $4 billion alone. These coins were made to meet daily demand for change, not to become collectibles. But sometimes, when coins are made in massive quantities, rare mistakes slip through, and those mistakes can turn ordinary pennies into legendary finds. The design of the 1992 D penny is classic and instantly recognizable. On the front, Abraham Lincoln faces to the right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date with the small D mint mark to the right. The reverse shows the Lincoln Memorial, with Lincoln's seated statue visible inside the building, and the words "United States of America," 1 cent, and "E pluribus unum" surrounding it. This design had been used since 1959, marking the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. And by 1992, it had become one of the most familiar coin designs in the world. The metal composition of the 1992 D penny is also important. Earlier Lincoln cents made before 1982 were mostly copper, but by the early 1980s, rising copper prices made it too expensive to produce solid copper pennies. So in 1992, pennies were made with a core of zinc and a thin copper coating, giving them their traditional color while reducing production costs. Each coin weighs about 2.5 grams and measures just under 3/4 of an inch across. To most people, this makes the coin feel lightweight and ordinary. But in the world of coin collecting, even ordinary coins can hide extraordinary secrets. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. In 1992, the U.S. Mint was preparing for a major design change. The Lincoln Memorial reverse would be replaced in 1993 with a new design honoring the Lincoln Bicentennial. That meant new dies, the metal stamps used to strike coins, were being created and tested in advance. During this transition period, a very rare mistake occurred. A small number of 1992 pennies were accidentally struck using the new reverse design that was not supposed to be used until 1993. These coins are known as the 1992 close AM pennies, named after the unusually close spacing between the letters A and M in the word America on the reverse. On most 1992 pennies, the letters A and M in America are spaced farther apart, with a visible gap between them. But on the rare variety, those letters are nearly touching, just like on the 1993 design. This tiny detail might seem insignificant, but in coin collecting, such small differences can mean the difference between a 1-cent coin and a 5-figure treasure. Here's the remarkable part. While most of the known close AM pennies come from the Philadelphia Mint, a few extremely rare examples have surfaced with the D Mint mark, meaning they were struck in Denver. These 1992 D close AM pennies are among the rarest modern Lincoln cents ever discovered. Only a handful are known to exist, and each one represents a mistake that somehow escaped quality control and entered circulation. So why are these pennies so valuable? First, it's all about rarity. When billions of coins are produced, collectors usually expect errors to be found eventually. But in this case, fewer than 10 confirmed examples of the 1992 D close AM penny are known. That level of scarcity puts it in a completely different category from most modern coins. Second, the error itself is historically significant because it marks a transition in U.S. coin design. These pennies weren't just mistakes. They were early previews of the future design, accidentally released into the present. Now let's talk about real-world value. One authenticated 1992 D close AM penny sold at auction for more than $20,000. Another example, in exceptional condition, has been valued even higher by collectors and dealers. These prices are shocking when you consider that the coin's face value is just 1 cent. Even standard 1992 D pennies in everyday condition are usually worth only a few cents each, but the rare variety can change someone's financial situation overnight. And it's not just about the close AM variety. Even regular 1992 D pennies can become valuable in high-grade condition. Coins that were never circulated and still have their original mint luster can be worth several dollars each, especially if they receive high professional grading scores. That might not sound life-changing, but it shows how condition alone can transform a common coin into something collectible. So how can you tell if you might have a rare 1992 D penny? First, look at the front of the coin. Make sure the date reads 1992 and that there is a small D mint mark to the right of the date, below the word "In God We Trust." That confirms it was struck at the Denver Mint. Next, flip the coin over and look closely at the word America at the top of the reverse. Focus on the spacing between the letters A and M on most 1992 pennies. You'll see a noticeable gap between them. But if those letters appear almost touching, you may be looking at the rare close AM variety. A magnifying glass or smartphone camera zoom can help you see this clearly. If you think you found one, don't clean the coin. Cleaning can reduce its value dramatically. Instead, place it in a protective holder and consider having it authenticated by a professional grading service. Counterfeits and altered coins do exist, so expert verification is essential before assuming you've struck gold. Speaking of fakes, how do people try to imitate this rare penny? Some counterfeiters attempt to modify regular 1992 D pennies by altering the reverse letters to look closer together. Others try to add or remove mint marks, but these modifications often leave tool marks, inconsistent surfaces, or incorrect letter shapes. Professional graders use microscopes, precise measurements, and known die characteristics to determine whether a coin is genuine. That's why authentication is so important when dealing with potentially valuable coins. Now let's talk about some surprising facts about the 1992 D penny. First, most people assume that older coins are always more valuable than newer ones. But this coin proves that age alone doesn't determine value. A penny from the 1940s or 1950s might be worth less than a rare error penny from the 1990s. It's rarity, demand, and historical significance that matter most. Second, many of the known 1992 close AM pennies were found years after they were minted, sitting unnoticed in collections, jars, and even loose change. This means there's always a chance, however small, that more examples are still out there, waiting to be discovered. That possibility keeps collectors searching and fuels the excitement around this coin. Third, the Lincoln Memorial reverse itself holds hidden detail that many people never notice. Inside the building, you can actually see Lincoln's seated statue, making it one of the few U.S. coin designs to feature the same person on both sides of the coin at the same time. That design choice alone makes these pennies historically interesting, even before considering rare errors. So why do collectors love the 1992 D penny so much? Part of it is the thrill of the hunt. Because most examples look completely ordinary, collectors can search rolls of pennies, old jars, and inherited collections without needing expensive equipment or specialized knowledge. Anyone with patience and curiosity can take part. That accessibility makes the coin especially appealing to beginners and seasoned collectors alike. Another reason is the story behind the error. Coins like the 1992 D close AM penny represent moments when something unexpected happened inside one of the most controlled manufacturing environments in the world. The U.S. Mint produces billions of coins with extreme precision, yet once in a while, something slips through. Those mistakes become frozen moments in time, physical reminders that even massive systems aren't perfect. Collectors also appreciate how this coin connects everyday life to hidden value. Almost everyone has handled pennies, tossed them into cups, or ignored them on sidewalks. The idea that one of those pennies could be worth tens of thousands of dollars transforms the way people see pocket change. It turns ordinary money into potential treasure. And there's something deeply satisfying about discovering something valuable that was hiding in plain sight. The 1992 D penny embodies that feeling better than almost any modern coin. Let's imagine this for a moment. You're sorting through an old jar of pennies that's been sitting in a closet for years. You're not expecting much, maybe a few wheat pennies, maybe nothing at all. But then you notice a 1992 penny that looks just a little different. You flip it over, check the spacing in America, and your heart starts racing. The letters are almost touching. Suddenly, that 1 cent coin in your hand might be worth more than your car, your computer, or your vacation budget. That moment of realization is what makes coin collecting so addictive and rewarding. Even if you never find the rare variety, learning about coins like the 1992 penny helps you see everyday objects differently. Coins aren't just money, they're miniature time capsules. Each one carries the history, technology, and culture of the era in which it was made. And sometimes, they carry secrets that take decades to uncover. Today, the 1992 penny continues to be one of the most searched for modern Lincoln cents. Collectors, hobbyists, and everyday people alike are still checking their change, hoping to find that elusive close AM variety. Auction houses continue to track and authenticate new discoveries, and every confirmed example adds another chapter to the coin's story. But even beyond its monetary value, this coin holds something more powerful: possibility. It reminds us that rare and valuable things aren't always locked behind glass cases or stored in vaults. Sometimes, they're hiding in coffee cans, desk drawers, and pockets, waiting for someone curious enough to look closely. So the next time you come across a 1992 penny, don't dismiss it. Turn it over. Look carefully at the letters in America. Take a second to appreciate the history in your hand. Because one tiny detail could turn that ordinary cent into one of the rarest modern coins in America. And who knows, the next incredible discovery in coin collecting history might already be sitting quietly in your change jar, just waiting for you to notice it. Most people walk past pennies without giving them a second thought. But what if one small copper coin from 1997, sitting quietly in your change jar, could tell a story of American history, hidden errors, and collector excitement that most people never notice? Today, we're exploring the 1997 mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, but holds some surprising details once you know what to look for. Whether you're a casual coin saver, a longtime collector, or someone who just enjoys discovering value in everyday objects, this story might change the way you see your spare change forever. The 1997 Lincoln penny was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the main U.S. coin production facilities. The mint mark under the date tells us exactly where it was made. In 1997, billions of pennies were produced across the country, but Denver alone struck more than 3 billion Lincoln cents that year. That sounds like a lot, and it is. But not every coin from that year is equal. Some examples stand out because of condition, unusual features, or rare mistakes that slipped past quality control. To understand why this penny matters, we need to step back for a moment and look at its history. By 1997, the Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for nearly 90 years. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, it became the first U.S. coin to feature a real person. Before that, American coins mostly showed symbolic figures like liberty or eagles. The Lincoln penny changed that forever. In 1997, the coin still carried the same basic design that had been used since 1959. On the front, or obverse, was Victor David Brenner's famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln, calm, thoughtful, and instantly recognizable. On the back, or reverse, was the Lincoln Memorial design created by Frank Gasparo. If you look closely at the memorial, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln seated inside, making it one of the few U.S. coins to show the same person on both sides. These pennies were struck during a time when the U.S. economy was growing, digital technology was expanding, and everyday life was changing fast. But the penny itself remained a constant, still copper-colored, still small, still quietly passing from hand to hand. Now let's talk about what makes the 1997 D penny unique. Although it looks like a traditional copper coin, the 1997 D penny is actually made mostly of zinc. Since 1982, U.S. pennies have been composed of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper coating. This change was made because copper had become too expensive to use in solid form. So while the coin shines like copper, its core tells a different story. The diameter of the coin is 19 millimeters, and it weighs about 2.5 grams. It has a smooth edge, no ridges, and the familiar warm tone that most people associate with American cents. But what really draws collectors to the 1997 D penny is not just its standard design. It's the possibility of rare errors and high-grade condition examples. Even though billions were made, only a small fraction survived in perfect or near-perfect condition. Most were heavily circulated, scratched, dulled, or damaged over time. Coins that avoided circulation, especially those pulled from rolls or mint sets, can still show full original luster and sharp details. These high-quality coins are the ones collectors hunt for, and then there are the errors. Some 1997 D pennies were struck with mistakes that make them far more interesting and valuable than face value. These include off-center strikes, where part of the design is missing because the blank wasn't positioned correctly in the press. Others show doubled dies, where letters or numbers appear slightly doubled due to misalignment during the die creation process. There are also clipped planchets, where a curved piece of the coin is missing because of a metal cutting error. One of the most exciting error types collectors look for on 1997 pennies is die cracks, raised lines caused by cracks in the die that transferred onto the coin. While minor cracks are common, dramatic ones that run through major design features can significantly increase collector interest. But even without errors, a perfectly preserved 1997 D penny can still be valuable, especially when graded by professional services. So how much is a 1997 D penny worth? In everyday circulated condition, most are worth exactly 1 cent. That's the honest truth. If your coin is scratched, dull, or worn, it's likely just spending money. But in uncirculated condition, values rise quickly. A well-preserved 1997 D penny graded MS65, meaning mint state 65, can sell for several dollars. Coins graded MS67 or higher, which are extremely rare due to the difficulty of preserving zinc-based pennies, can sell for significantly more. Some top-graded examples have sold at auction for over $100, and in rare cases, even higher depending on eye appeal and strike quality. Error coins can go much higher. For example, a 1997 D penny with a strong off-center strike has sold for anywhere between $20 and $150, depending on how dramatic the error is and whether the date is still visible. Doubled die examples, if confirmed by a grading service, can sell for hundreds. Rare major errors, especially those in excellent condition, can command even stronger prices from collectors who specialize in modern mint mistakes. These aren't fantasy numbers. Their real auction results from collectors who know exactly what they're looking for and are willing to pay to secure rare pieces. Now let's talk about how to identify a real 1997 D penny and how to avoid fakes or altered coins. First, check the date. It should clearly read 1997. Then look just below the date for the mint mark. A small D means it was struck in Denver. No mint mark means it came from Philadelphia. Next, examine the weight. A genuine 1997 penny should weigh around 2.5 grams. If it weighs significantly more or less, it may be damaged or altered. Look closely at the color and surface. Real coins will show natural wear patterns and aging. Artificial toning, unusual textures, or strange shine could indicate cleaning or modification, which lowers collector value. If you suspect a doubled die, tilt the coin under light and look closely at the letters in Liberty, the date, and the motto "In God we trust." True doubling will look like a second image beneath or beside the original, not just a shadow or blur. And if you believe you've found something special, especially a rare error, professional authentication is always the safest step. Third-party grading services can confirm authenticity and provide an official grade that makes the coin easier to sell. Now let's dive into some fun and surprising facts about the 1997 D penny. In 1997, the U.S. Mint produced more Lincoln cents than almost any other coin denomination that year. Pennies were still widely used for everyday purchases, and demand was high. Yet today, fewer and fewer pennies circulate actively in commerce, making older ones feel strangely nostalgic. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial design used on this coin would be replaced just 12 years later in 2009. That year marked Lincoln's 200th birthday, and the Mint introduced 4 special reverse designs before eventually switching to the Union Shield in 2010. That means the 1997 D penny belongs to the final full era of the classic Memorial reverse, a design that ran from 1959 to 2008. Collectors also appreciate the 1997 D penny because it represents modern coinage that's still affordable but increasingly difficult to find in top condition. Zinc-based cents are softer than earlier copper ones, which means they damage more easily. Even small scratches, spots, or edge dings can drop the grade dramatically. That's why pristine examples are so scarce and so desirable. Another surprising detail is that many uncirculated 1997 D pennies came from mint rolls that were stored for decades in closets, drawers, and safety deposit boxes. Some collectors today still find unopened rolls that haven't seen daylight since the 1990s, making each opening feel like a small treasure hunt. So why do collectors love this coin today? Part of the appeal is accessibility. You don't need thousands of dollars to start searching for 1997 D pennies. You can find them in circulation, bank rolls, or old coin jars. That makes the hunt exciting for beginners and experienced collectors alike. Another reason is error hunting. Modern cents are one of the most popular areas for error collectors because they're plentiful, affordable, and full of surprises. The 1997 D penny sits right in the middle of that world, modern enough to still exist in quantity, but old enough to carry real collector value when something unusual appears. Collectors also appreciate its connection to the final years of the Lincoln Memorial reverse, a design that many Americans grew up seeing every day. For some, this penny is not just a coin. It's a memory of childhood allowances, school lunches, vending machines, and pocket change from a different era. And finally, the 1997 D penny represents a powerful idea in coin collecting. That value doesn't always come from age alone. Sometimes, it comes from condition, rarity within abundance, or a single tiny mistake that transforms an everyday object into something extraordinary. Now imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in a drawer, jar, or old purse, there's a 1997 D penny that's never been spent. It still holds its original shine. Its details are sharp. Its surface is smooth. Or maybe there's one with a hidden error, a doubled letter, a misaligned strike, or a clipped edge waiting quietly to be discovered. To most people, it's just 1 cent. But to a collector, it could be a story. It could be a reminder that history doesn't always live in museums or textbooks. Sometimes, it lives in the smallest objects we touch every day, coins that pass through millions of hands, yet somehow survive long enough to tell a different story. So the next time you see a penny dated 1997 with a small D beneath the year, don't rush past it. Turn it over. Look closely. Hold it under the light. Because that tiny coin might not just be spare change. It might be a piece of modern American history. And sometimes, the most ordinary-looking coins are the ones with the most extraordinary stories waiting to be found. Most people wouldn't think twice about a penny from 2002. But what if I told you that one small detail on this ordinary-looking coin could make it worth far more than 1 cent, and that millions of people may already own one without realizing it? Today, we're exploring the 2002 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a modern coin with hidden surprises, collector interest, and stories that connect everyday pocket change to American history. At first glance, the 2002 Lincoln penny looks just like any other cent you've seen in circulation. It shows Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But there's something important missing on many of these coins. No letter beneath the date, no mint mark, and that small detail opens the door to an entire world of collecting, value, and discovery. Let's start by understanding what this coin really is. The 2002 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin struck by the United States Mint in Philadelphia. Since 1980, pennies made in Philadelphia usually do not carry a mint mark, unlike coins from Denver which show a D, or San Francisco, which often show an S. So when collectors say no mint mark, they usually mean the coin was struck in Philadelphia. But that doesn't mean every 2002 penny without a mint mark is valuable. What makes this coin fascinating is how it fits into a much larger story. A story about mass production, hidden errors, and the rare exceptions that can turn everyday coins into collector treasures. In 2002, the United States Mint produced billions of Lincoln cents to meet demand for everyday commerce. This was still the era of the Lincoln Memorial reverse design, which had been in use since 1959. The country was moving through a time of major change, the early years of the new millennium, and yet the penny remained one of the most familiar and stable symbols of American money. The Lincoln cent itself traces its roots back to 1909, when it was first issued to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person instead of a symbolic figure like Liberty. By 2002, Lincoln had already been on the penny for more than 90 years, making him one of the most enduring faces in American coinage history. Now let's talk about what this coin is made of, because that's part of its story too. The 2002 Lincoln penny is composed mostly of zinc, with a thin copper coating on the outside. This change happened in 1982, when rising copper prices forced the mint to switch from solid copper to copper-plated zinc. So while older pennies feel heavier and are mostly copper, the 2002 penny is lighter and has a zinc core underneath that shiny copper surface. The front of the coin shows Abraham Lincoln facing right, designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner. You'll find the word Liberty on the left side, the year 2002 on the right, and the phrase "In God We Trust" across the top. The back of the coin shows the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., with the words United States of America along the top, 1 cent at the bottom, and E pluribus unum above the memorial. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial, one of the smallest detailed designs ever placed on a U.S. coin. So what makes the 2002 no-mint mark penny special? On its own, most examples are very common. Billions were made, and in average circulated condition, most are worth exactly 1 cent. But the excitement comes from rare varieties, mint errors, and high-grade examples that collectors are always hunting for. Some 2002 pennies were struck with mistakes, and in the coin world, mistakes can be valuable. One of the most interesting errors is the off-center strike, where the design is not centered on the coin blank. Depending on how dramatic the shift is, these can sell for anywhere from $10 to over $100. Another sought-after error is the double die. This happens when the coin die is misaligned during production, causing parts of the design, especially letters or numbers, to appear doubled. A clear doubled date or doubled lettering on Liberty, or "In God We Trust," can increase a coin's value significantly. There are also clipped planchets, where part of the coin is missing due to a cutting error during blank production, and broad strikes, where the coin spreads wider than normal because it wasn't properly contained by the collar during striking. Each of these errors turns a common penny into something unusual, and sometimes very valuable. Then there's condition. Even without errors, a 2002 no mint mark penny in perfect or near-perfect condition can be worth far more than face value. Collectors call these coins mint state, meaning they show no wear from circulation. Coins graded M-67 or higher by professional grading services can sell for impressive prices because so few survive in that condition. Most pennies get scratched, dented, or dulled quickly once they enter circulation. So when a flawless example surfaces, especially one with bright red original luster, collectors take notice. Now let's talk about real-world value examples. In average circulated condition, a 2002 no mint mark penny is usually worth 1 cent, maybe 2 or 3 cents if it's very clean. But uncirculated examples can sell for 25 cents to a few dollars, depending on condition. High-grade certified examples have sold for much more. Some 2002 Lincoln Cents graded M-67 red have sold at auction for $50 to over $100. And error coins from this year, especially dramatic double dies or major off-center strikes, can sell anywhere from $100 to several $100s, depending on rarity and demand. While this isn't a $1,000,000 penny, it's a perfect example of how something ordinary can become valuable when it's unusual, rare, or preserved in exceptional condition. Now let's talk about how to identify a genuine 2002 no mint mark penny and how to avoid mistakes. First, look at the date. It should clearly read 2002 on the front of the coin. Beneath the date, there should be no mint mark. That means no D and no S. If you see a letter, it's not the Philadelphia version. Next, check the design details. Lincoln's portrait should be sharp, and the lettering should be clean and readable. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial should show clear columns and fine lines. To look for errors, use a magnifying glass or phone camera zoom. Check the date and letters for doubling. Look at the rim for missing sections or unusual shapes. Check whether the design is centered or shifted. Also, weigh the coin if you can. A standard 2002 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. A significant difference could indicate damage, plating issues, or an unusual error, though weight alone doesn't guarantee value. As for counterfeits, they are extremely rare for modern pennies because the face value is so low. Most so-called fake coins are actually altered coins or misunderstood damage. If you ever find a coin that looks truly unusual or valuable, it's best to have it checked by a reputable coin dealer or professional grading service. Now here's something surprising. Even though billions of 2002 pennies were made, very few survive in top condition. Most people don't think to save modern pennies. They get dropped, scraped, and worn almost immediately. So when collectors search for high-grade examples today, they often come up short, especially coins with original red color and no surface marks. That makes modern coins like the 2002 penny surprisingly challenging to collect in perfect condition. Another interesting fact is that 2002 was one of the last full years before major design changes came to the Lincoln Cent. In 2009, the Mint released 4 special reverse designs to honor Lincoln's life, and in 2010, the Lincoln Memorial was replaced with the Union Shield design that's still used today. That makes the 2002 penny part of the final chapter of the long-running Memorial Reverse era. Collectors also love this coin because it's easy to find and exciting to search. You don't need to spend hundreds of dollars to get started. You can check your pocket change, coin jars, old piggy banks, and inherited collections. You might already own several 2002 no mint mark pennies without realizing it. And while most will be common, the thrill comes from the hunt. The chance that one of them might have a rare error or exceptional condition. This kind of coin collecting turns everyday life into a treasure hunt. A trip to the grocery store, A handful of change from a cashier, or an old drawer at home, suddenly becomes an opportunity for discovery. There's also something deeply satisfying about holding a coin that passed through countless hands, paid for countless small purchases, and quietly carried history forward without anyone noticing. Now let's talk about why collectors care about modern coins like this at all. Some people think only old coins from the 1800s or early 1900s are worth collecting. But modern coins tell a different story. They represent how money is made today, how technology has changed minting, and how even in an age of digital payments, physical coins still play a role in daily life. The 2002 penny reflects the early 21st century, a time when America was transitioning into a digital economy, yet still relied heavily on physical currency. It's part of a living history, not a distant one. And because so few people save modern coins in high condition, collectors believe some of today's pocket change could become tomorrow's scarce collectibles. That makes coins like the 2002 no-mint mark penny especially interesting to long-term collectors. Here's another surprising detail. Some 2002 pennies show unusual plating issues, where the copper coating peels, bubbles, or exposes the zinc core beneath. While many of these are considered damage rather than true mint errors, some well-documented examples have attracted collector interest, especially when the defect clearly occurred during manufacturing rather than after circulation. Coins with missing or partially missing copper plating can appear silver gray instead of copper-colored, making them stand out instantly. And then there's the human side of collecting. Many collectors first get interested in coins not through rare gold pieces or ancient artifacts, but through everyday coins just like this. A penny from a pocket, a jar on a shelf, a coin passed down from a parent or grandparent. The 2002 no-mint mark penny is often part of someone's first discovery, their first realization that coins aren't just money, but stories, history, and potential value. Now imagine this. Somewhere right now, a 2002 penny with a rare double die or off-center strike is sitting in a drawer, a purse, or a couch cushion. Someone might use it tomorrow to buy a cup of coffee, never realizing it's worth 50, 100, or even several $100s. That's not fantasy, that's how rare coins are lost and found every day. That possibility is what makes this coin exciting. Not because every example is valuable, but because some are, and you never know until you look. So if you're holding a 2002 penny right now, take a closer look. Check for that missing mint mark. Look at the letters. Look at the date. Look at the edges. You might be holding nothing special, or you might be holding something rare, unusual, and worth far more than 1 cent. That's the magic of coin collecting. The 2002 no-mint mark Lincoln penny teaches us something important. Value isn't always obvious. Sometimes it hides in plain sight. Sometimes it's wrapped in something small, ordinary, and easily overlooked. But with curiosity and attention, even the most common objects can reveal something remarkable. And the next time someone tells you a penny isn't worth much, you'll know better. Because sometimes that little copper-colored coin isn't just spare change. It's history, it's mystery, and for a lucky few, it's treasure. So keep checking your change. Keep asking questions. And remember, the next valuable coin you discover might already be in your pocket. Most people would never look twice at a 2006 penny. But what if I told you that one small coin from that year, especially with a tiny letter beneath Lincoln's date, could be hiding a story worth far more than 1 cent? Today, we're uncovering the truth behind the 2006 D mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin millions of Americans have handled, spent, and forgotten, yet one that still holds surprises for collectors, treasure hunters, and anyone curious about what everyday money can secretly become. This coin is part of the famous Lincoln Memorial Cent series, one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. On the front, we see President Abraham Lincoln's profile, just as we've seen since 1909. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall, symbolizing national unity and remembrance. But what makes this penny different is the small letter D beneath the year, showing it was minted in Denver. In 2006, the United States Mint was producing billions of pennies to keep up with everyday demand. Pennies were still widely used for cash transactions, parking meters, and price rounding. The Denver Mint alone struck over 3 billion Lincoln cents that year. At first glance, that makes this coin seem common, and in many cases it is. But inside massive production numbers, hidden varieties, unusual errors, and high-grade survivors can turn an ordinary cent into something special. To understand the importance of the 2006 D penny, it helps to look at its place in American coin history. By 2006, the Lincoln Memorial design had already been in use for nearly 50 years, starting in 1959. It was the first U.S. circulating coin to show a real building instead of a symbolic image. The design honored Lincoln not only as a president, but as a lasting national figure tied to unity and freedom. The year 2006 itself was a time of transition for American coinage. Rising copper prices had already changed the penny's composition decades earlier, and debates about eliminating the penny altogether were growing louder. Yet the Lincoln cent continued rolling off presses, quietly doing its job in pockets and purses across the country. Now let's talk about what this coin is made of. Despite looking copper, the 2006 D Lincoln penny is actually mostly zinc, about 97.5% zinc, with a thin copper coating on the outside. This change happened in 1982 when copper became too expensive for mass production. So while older pennies are solid copper, this one is lighter and slightly more fragile, especially if damaged. The design on the front shows Lincoln facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" along the top edge, "Liberty" to the left, and the date with the D Mint mark on the right. The back shows the Lincoln Memorial, with United States of America and E Pluribus Unum above, and 1 cent below. If you look closely at the center columns of the memorial, you can actually see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln, one of the smallest detailed figures ever placed on a U.S. coin. At first, this coin seems completely ordinary, but collectors know that even common coins can become valuable under the right conditions. One major factor is condition. Most 2006 D pennies were heavily circulated, scratched, and dulled within months of release. But coins that were never used, especially those preserved in mint condition, are much harder to find today. Coins graded MS67 or higher by professional grading services can sell for surprising prices. While a worn 2006 D penny is worth just 1 cent, a perfectly preserved example can sell for tens, sometimes even hundreds of dollars depending on demand and market conditions. And that's before we even talk about error coins. Mint errors are where things get exciting. During mass production, billions of pennies move through machines at incredible speed. Occasionally, something goes wrong, and when it does, collectors take notice. Some 2006 D pennies have been found with off-center strikes, clipped planchets, doubled letters, or weak strikes. These mistakes happen when the metal blanks are misaligned, damaged, or struck more than once. One of the most interesting types of errors seen in 2006 D pennies is doubling, where parts of the date or lettering appear doubled due to a misalignment in the die that struck the coin. While most doubling is minor, strong examples can dramatically increase a coin's value. There have also been reports of broad strikes coins that were struck without the retaining collar, causing them to spread wider than normal, and partial collar errors, where part of the edge looks expanded. These coins stand out immediately when placed next to a normal penny. Another rare type is the wrong planchet error, where a penny is accidentally struck on a metal blank meant for another coin denomination. These are extremely scarce, and when verified, can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Now let's talk real-world value examples. Most circulated 2006 D pennies are worth face value. However, uncirculated rolls, especially those stored away since the year of release, can sell for several dollars per roll. Individual coins graded MS66 or MS67 by professional services like PCGS or NGC have sold at auction for anywhere from $20 to over $100, depending on eye appeal and market demand. Error coins bring much stronger prices. Off-center strikes with visible dates and mint marks can sell for $50 to $150. Strong double die examples may bring $75 or more. And dramatic errors like wrong metal strikes or major mint mishaps can exceed several $100s. What makes these prices even more interesting is that most people never look closely at modern pennies. Many valuable examples are likely still sitting unnoticed in jars, drawers, and coin rolls across the country. So how do you tell if your 2006 D penny is something special? First, check the mint mark. Look just below the date on the front of the coin. If you see a small D, it was minted in Denver. No mint mark means Philadelphia, and an S would indicate San Francisco, usually proof coins. For this video, we're focusing on the Denver version. Next, examine the condition. Does the coin still shine? Are the details sharp? Can you clearly see Lincoln's hair, jawline, and coat? Is the memorial crisp on the reverse with strong columns and clear lettering? The fewer scratches and marks, the better. Then, look closely at the lettering and numbers. Use a magnifying glass if possible. Are any letters doubled? Does the date look thicker or shadowed? Is the coin perfectly round or does it look clipped or off-center? These are all clues that something unusual might be happening. Weighing the coin can also help. A normal 2006 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it weighs significantly more or less, that could suggest an error or wrong planchet strike. And finally, compare it to other pennies from the same year. Differences become much easier to spot when you line coins up side by side. One important warning: altered coins exist. Some people try to modify coins by carving, grinding, or adding fake doubling. Real mint errors happen during production and usually affect the entire design consistently, not just one small area. If something looks suspicious, professional authentication is always the safest route. Now let's explore some fun and surprising facts about the 2006 D penny. Even though billions were made, very few survive today in perfect condition. Pennies are the most abused coin in circulation. They get dropped, scratched, corroded, and ignored more than any other denomination. That's why high-grade examples become rare over time, even when production numbers are huge. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial Penny Series ended just 3 years later in 2009, when the design was replaced with 4 special reverse designs honoring Lincoln's life. That makes the 2006 penny part of the final era of this iconic reverse, adding nostalgic appeal for collectors. Also, the tiny Lincoln statue inside the memorial on the reverse means this coin technically features Lincoln twice, once on the front and once on the back. It's one of the only U.S. coins to do that. And here's something most people don't realize. Collectors often study modern pennies because minting technology, while advanced, still produces fascinating mistakes. Some of the most dramatic and expensive error coins discovered in recent decades come from modern circulation coins, not old ones. So why do collectors love the 2006 D penny? First, it represents everyday America. This coin passed through grocery stores, gas stations, school cafeterias, and parking meters. It's a piece of daily life history, frozen in copper-plated zinc. Second, it's accessible. Unlike rare gold coins or early American silver, modern Lincoln cents can still be found in circulation, rolls, and old jars. That makes them perfect for beginners and experienced collectors alike. Third, it's full of potential. Most people dismiss modern pennies, which means treasures often go unnoticed. That sense of discovery, the idea that something valuable could be hiding in your pocket change, is what keeps collectors searching. And finally, The Lincoln cent itself holds emotional meaning. Lincoln is one of the most respected figures in American history. His portrait has appeared on the penny for over a century, longer than any other president on any U.S. coin. That continuity creates a strong connection between the past and present. Now imagine this scenario. You're cleaning out a drawer, sorting through loose change. You pick up a dull penny, dated 2006, with a tiny D beneath the year. At first it feels ordinary, but then you look closer. The letters look thicker. The edge seems odd. The coin feels slightly off. You search online, compare photos, and realize it might be an error coin, something that escaped the mint unnoticed. Suddenly, that 1 cent piece isn't just spare change anymore. It's a story, a mystery, a potential collectible. That's the magic of coin collecting. It turns everyday objects into historical artifacts and possible treasures. Even if your 2006 D penny turns out to be worth only face value, it still represents a moment in time. A year when millions of Americans handled the same design, used the same money, and passed along the same symbols of national history. But if you're lucky, if you find one in exceptional condition or with a true mint error, that small coin could become something far more meaningful, not just financially but personally, because you found it, you noticed it, you gave it a second look, and that's what separates ordinary coins from extraordinary discoveries. So the next time a penny lands in your hand, don't rush to spend it. Look at the date. Look for the mint mark. Look at the details. Because even a 2006 D Lincoln penny, a coin most people ignore, might be hiding a story that hasn't been told yet. And sometimes, the greatest treasures aren't buried underground or locked in vaults. Sometimes they're sitting quietly in your pocket, waiting to be noticed.